What if Rome's greatest secrets weren't carved in stone or written in scrolls, but hidden in silk sheets, erased from memory the moment they were lived? We imagine ancient Rome as a world of marble columns, fierce gladiators, and purple-robed emperors. Hollywood taught us to worship the Colosseum and the Senate. But beneath that polished surface lay a darker Rome, one built on submission. Among its forgotten figures were male concubines, young men and boys trapped in gilded cages. Not lovers. Not equals. Just tools. Bought, silenced, used. Their names erased before they were even recorded. We often link Roman concubinage to women, lower-class unofficial wives. But male concubinage, though less documented, was equally real. Often more scandalous. These men, usually captives or slaves, lived lives where their worth hinged on obedience, silence, and beauty. Their erasure wasn't accidental, it was deliberate. In a culture obsessed with dominance, submissive men weren't just taboo, they were humiliating. So history looked away. But we won't. We're peeling back Rome's marble mask to reveal the brutal truth. Who were these men? What did they endure? How did they vanish? From the moment of capture to their final, forgotten breath, we trace their invisible steps. This isn't a tale of glory. It's the echo of voices smothered in silk and silence. Becoming a concubine was never a choice. Most were victims of war, slavery, or trafficking. Rome's armies brought back not just gold, but people. Enslaved boys from Gaul, Thrace, Judea, and beyond were paraded naked in markets, inspected, priced by beauty and passivity. Once sold, their fate was sealed. Some cleaned. Some danced. The special ones, those deemed beautiful, were groomed for intimacy. Though concubiness could mean male concubine, elite authors avoided the term. Too uncomfortable. He lived in limbo, not quite a slave, but never free. Silk robes, perfumed skin, maybe poetry lessons, all conditional. If he aged, scarred, or disobeyed, he was discarded. Unlike women who could bear heirs, men had no leverage. Only their bodies. Until those, too, lost value. Roman law gave concubines no rights. For men, it was even crueler. Rome idolized virtus, masculine dominance. A submissive man wasn't just pitied, he was scandalous. So they were erased. Euphemized. Forgotten. Some served in imperial households, entertaining senators and emperors in private. But they weren't loved. They were trophies. Rome conquered land and flesh. This fractured identity, desired yet disposable, defined the male concubine. Always seen. Never acknowledged. To outsiders, life in a domus or palace seemed luxurious, fine clothes, rare perfumes, protection. But behind the velvet curtains, there was rot. From the moment they were chosen, they were groomed like artifacts. Smooth skin, styled hair, clean teeth, maintained for display, not health. Slaves bathed them, fed them, dressed them. They weren't people. They were porcelain. Their roles went beyond sex. They recited poetry, danced, played music, told jokes. Some even learned Latin and Greek, not to be respected, but to entertain. Their intellect wasn't freedom. It was ornamentation. Their time was never their own. Every day revolved around the master's whims. Some lived within earshot of his chambers, always on call. Others were punished for the smallest infractions, speaking without permission, a misplaced glance. And all of it played out under constant surveillance. The master watched. Slaves watched. Guests watched. A single word could mean whipping, branding, or resale. The palace wasn't a sanctuary. It was a velvet-wrapped prison. Even the rewards, a bracelet, a seat at dinner, weren't freedom. They were embroidered shackles. Incentives designed to tighten the leash, not loosen it. Behind marble walls was a stage. And the concubine, always performing, submission, sweetness, sensuality. His value was a daily audition. Because in Rome, sex wasn't pleasure. It was power. Status meant domination. For male concubines, sex wasn't intimacy, it was control. Their bodies were battlegrounds. Surrender was not optional. Elite Roman men had near total control over their slaves. Sexual access wasn't taboo, it was assumed. But what made the concubine's life uniquely cruel was the illusion of closeness. He lived in the house, performed affection, but it was ownership, not love. There was no relationship. Only compliance. Consent didn't exist. Refusal wasn't an option. Roman law didn't consider raping a slave a crime, it was a right. The emotional toll? Immense. Sex was fear. A single misstep meant punishment, beatings, starvation, public mockery. Some were forced into humiliating outfits, paraded before guests, turned into warnings. And when the records weren't silent, they used euphemism or mockery. Take Nero and Sporus. Nero castrated the boy, held a public wedding, and called him wife. What sounds like gossip hides mutilation, identity theft, and abuse disguised as romance. Sex with concubines was also a spectacle. Elites flaunted their exotic trophies, shared degrading stories, or passed them around like wine. This wasn't desire, it was domination. Violence wasn't always physical. Renaming, reshaping, erasing someone's self was just as brutal. The concubine became a mirror, his identity buried under performance. In Rome, sex spoke the language of power. For the male concubine, every encounter was a silent scream. Roman society, obsessed with honor and masculinity, had no place for men like him, except in the shadows. His body might be secretly wanted, but his existence was a public stain. Roman virtues demanded that real men dominated. Submission equaled shame. To the public, a man used sexually, especially by another man, was disgusting. Concubines became gossip. Their stories turned into scandals. When powerful men fell, whispers of their degenerate habits surfaced, and concubines became proof of moral collapse. Few left their own words behind. Their voices weren't preserved. Their pain wasn't recorded. They existed only in reflections of masters, poets, judges, and gossips. All saw them as objects. To be a male concubine in ancient Rome was to be trapped in plain sight, used in secret, denied in public, and discarded without a name. Most vanished from history, erased by silence and snobbery. A few, thanks to scandal or proximity to power, left behind faint, tragic echoes. Sporus is the most infamous. Castrated and kept by Emperor Nero, he was dressed in the gowns of Nero's late wife, renamed Sabina, and wed in a public ceremony. The court watched. Historians reacted with shock, but not compassion. What's often ignored is the horror. A child mutilated, transformed into a replica of a dead woman, then paraded and abused. Sporus became a grotesque symbol in Nero's crumbling theater. While imperial depravity filled scrolls, countless others suffered in silence, too far from power to become scandal, too broken to be remembered. Outside the palace, the same stories likely played out, just with fewer witnesses. Senators, generals, and landowners hid their secrets in villas. These boys' names are gone, their pain scattered in jokes and footnotes. In rare cases, a concubine might be freed or left a small inheritance, not out of kindness, but strategy. Loyalty bought with gifts could be taken just as quickly. Even when such stories made it into Roman history, they weren't viewed as abuse. They were cautionary tales, mocking emperors or gender deviants. The concubines? Just props. Not people. That names like Sporus and Pythagoras survive is rare and tragic. In Rome, youth was currency, beauty was power, and both expired fast. Aging wasn't a transition, but a collapse. The moment stubble grew or voices deepened, they lost value. Masters replaced them quickly, through war, trade, or coercion. Some were reassigned to menial tasks, others sold. Especially the castrated, no longer desired, not considered real men, and excluded from society. A few were freed, named in wills, released as a gesture of fading guilt. But freedom didn't erase their past. Their reputations followed them into modest trades or disguised servitude. The end wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. A slow fade. From prized possession to forgotten remnant. They remind us how beauty, in systems built on power, becomes a curse. History, like Roman architecture, is built to dazzle, marble, glory, triumph. But beneath the stone lies scaffolding made of suffering, bodies used, voices silenced. Male concubines were among the most invisible. Stripped of agency, autonomy, even memory. Desired, yet punished for being vulnerable. Though they stood beside emperors, they lived in shadows, trapped. Voiceless. Their tragedy lies in proximity, close enough to touch power, but never to hold it. They saw the faces behind the statues, endured appetites behind ceremonies, then vanished like smoke in marble corridors. Names like Sporus and Pythagoras remain not as survivors, but relics of trauma, preserved by accident, not mercy. The real tragedy isn't just the abuse. It's the erasure. Their stories pierce the Roman myth, revealing the rot beneath the glory. Behind every triumphal arch are lives history chose to forget, because their pain was inconvenient. But their silence speaks. It echoes in the metaphors of Roman poets, in scandalous footnotes, and in the gaps where names should be. It reminds us that empire always has a cost, that power unchecked twists intimacy into control and turns people into decoration. So when we marvel at Rome, let's also listen for its ghosts. Not just gladiators or labors, but those consumed quietly within palace walls. They may have no statues, but their absence still roars. If you heard even a whisper of them in this silence, let it echo. If this story made you rethink power, sex, and silence, don't let it end here. Like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment. What part stayed with you the most? There are more forgotten voices still waiting to be heard.